Welcome back to Daytime at 9. Addiction is not something that only people living in certain zip codes are battling. It's happening in every community in our country. And it's what happens in Hollywood, it seems, just about every week. We've got Greg Hanley, Alex Rahici, and Daniel Baldwin with SOBA Recovery. They are back. Love when you guys are here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're always talking about different topics, and we thought we would talk kind of about addiction in Hollywood, change it up a little bit today. Dr. Phil, who is on Fox, he recently had an interview with Kim Richards, who is one of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She's been battling addiction, I think, for a very long time. She claimed throughout the entire season that she was clean and sober, but her actions and her behaviors, everyone was really worried about her. So first of all, are you aware, or have you kept up at all with Kim Richards and what's going on with her?
Well,
Daniel?
I'm familiar a little bit with it, and I will tell you that for Greg, Alex, and I, our experience with television versus sobriety, when I was a member of the original cast of Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, I went on that show and I was already sober, and I left the show because it's almost impossible to try to do a television show while you're actively using and while you're having this problem. And it's very sensationalized because there's the part of the show that is the production team which wants drama and wants craziness.
Yeah.
My advice beyond anything that, I don't know what Dr. Phil's telling her, and get off the show. If you really want to get sober, get off the show and stop worrying about your popularity and how many shampoos you're selling and get sober and make that your job for a while and then go back on the show.
I had a chance to talk to Dr. Phil, and I asked him about her, and yeah, he said, it's obvious that she had relapsed, but the people who really suffer are her children. And I think we have a soundbite, and I want you guys to see what he said about how this affects Kim Richards' children.
Well, I also talked to 3 of her 4 children during this show as well, and talk about what impact this has on them. For example, they all learned about her arrest and her conduct the next day when they were just out going about their lives. Wow. Because she was in jail and didn't have an opportunity to get in touch with them and tell them. And people were just coming up, did you hear what happened with your mother? What happened with your mother last night? They're like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So, they're embarrassed. She's embarrassed for them. The whole meltdown was a really bad situation. And this is a woman that's had a lot in her life going on.
So that was what he kind of wanted to focus on, was the fact that her poor children, they're the ones who are really suffering. And you guys have seen it. You see it all the time. What does this do to families, especially when you have a single parent home, really, and the children are dealing with this?
It's crushing. And the thing about this is that people, a lot of times they're afraid to say something. And I was on the phone yesterday with somebody saying, what do I do? How can I stop this? I know what's going on. They won't admit it. Now with somebody who's a celebrity on TV, it's like 4 times as hard to say anything. And there's only going to be, there's 3 outcomes. Either somebody stops and gets help, they get arrested and they're stopped, or they overdose and they don't make it. There's nothing else. There's going to be an ending to this. And the families, I don't know how many times that I've had kids at my house from people that I knew that had a problem, that got in trouble, and I knew their kids were sitting at home and didn't know what to do. And sometimes the kids are young kids just coming home from school. So it's not like older kids all the time. The other thing too is that when you're talking about Hollywood celebrities, I worked with a lot of people as a sober companion years ago, and it was one of the most difficult things that I did, because people want to get high with celebrities, and it is like you go anywhere and people are walking up and offering them, even though they know that they're in recovery, they're offering them drugs or drinks because it's really cool to say I got high with so-and-so.
People want to brag about it.
It happened all week long during
It happened the other night.
Yesterday.
To me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're Daniel Baldwin.
I had to turn around and what I do now, what I didn't do before was, and you learn from that behavior of being with people that know this. is I go right away and I tell Greg, man, these people are coming up to, and then you need to get out of there, you know what I mean? Because not that that's going to happen, but I don't need to be around that. You know, and on the family note, you know, my oldest daughter, Kaylee, you know, went through that when I was in bad trouble and a cover of newspapers with arrests and everything. And to this day, my relationship is very, very strained. She still doesn't really trust, even after being sober for a long time. She's very tentative around me and has very limited exposure to me. Because I remember having to hear her say to me, do you know what it was like to be 13 years old and have my friends come up to me in junior high school during those really, you know, horrible years for a young
it's hard
girl,
enough
right?
at 13,
and say,
yeah.
hey, you know, your dad, he doesn't look so good, you know, and she had to bear that cross.
Well, and a lot of times, so you have a community of sober people that get very close, and they become kind of like a family. And when one of them goes out, it affects the people who are in that community. And so many times I'll say, so now you know what it feels like. When somebody is missing, when they're out, when they're in trouble, the emotional connection to that is something that it's very hard to get rid of that. It's post-traumatic stress for kids and wives and husbands and family members when people are doing this.
All right, well, we're going to go to break. You guys are going to stick around. We're actually going to talk about signs that your teenager may be trying to hide an addiction from you. We're going to break down some of those. We have the top 5. These are things parents need to absolutely know about because it could end up saving their teen's life. So do not touch that remote. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Daytime at 9. If your teenager were battling an addiction, would you know it? Would you recognize the signs? Greg Hanley, Alex Ricci, and Daniel Baldwin with SOBA Recovery are here. They are back. And this is so cool because Greg Hanley, he's like the most interesting man in the world, right? So he's very interesting. People love Greg. He also publishes a magazine. It's called Recovery Today. And in the latest one, the latest issue, you have the top 5 signs that your teenager is trying to conceal a drug habit. And I thought we could go over those for parents. It's really important that they know.
Sure.
Okay, so first up it was a strange gut feeling that something is wrong or off with your child. And you always say, all of you, if you feel it and you think something's not right, it's not.
Yeah, that's number one.
Listen to it, right?
Yeah, intuition from a mom is, and I've said that 1,000 times. If you think something's wrong, something is wrong. Right. And find out what it is. Get a drug test. It's an emergency.
What about those parents who say, I have this feeling, but there's no signs? I mean,
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If
No
you-
obvious signs,
Yeah.
I should say, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, people can be really good at covering it up. And so start with your intuition. If something has changed and you think something's off, because it becomes more obvious as things, you know, as the drugs change too.
Okay.
Well, and look at the downside. Play the scenario out. So that feeling is in you, and you're wondering whether your son or daughter, because you just have the feeling, you can't
Right.
pinpoint it. And then you turn around and you do exactly what Greg said. You go to a pharmacy, you buy a drug test, and you say, you know what, I'm a little concerned. Would you please? Now, if there's absolutely nothing wrong, first of all, they're never going to say no to your parent that I want you to take this test. If you are wrong, and chances are about 1 in 100 if you really have that feeling, but if you are, you've ruffled their feathers a little bit, you dust them off and they're on their way.
And they
what I
know
mean?
you're watching. I got my eye on
Yeah.
you. I'm watching.
sure.
And it gives them an out.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
then you're done. If they're not
well,
doing it, then
no, I mean
yeah.
at school, they can say, when somebody offers them something, they can say, I get drug tested. And so
Can't do it,
they get an
sorry.
out without not being cool.
That's
you know?
true. Good point there. The second sign is if they have a sudden need for more privacy, more secrecy, parents should be talking to them at that point, right?
Yeah, you only have a certain amount of time. They turn 18 real quick. And I'm not a big advocate for teenage privacy.
Right.
I wish somebody would have intervened a little more on me. But and a lot of times people don't want to do anything because they're afraid then they have to deal with it. But I've had countless parents sitting on the couch with their kid thinking that they've been drinking or using pot too much, and they're worried about them. And I'll send the parents away, and I'll find out that the kids have been using really hard drugs for years, and it's a shocking thing to the parents. It doesn't occur to people what's going on today. That's what is going on today. It's the levels of the drugs and the availability it's completely changed.
It's quite scary, actually.
Keep
for
hearing
parents.
it over and over again too. If the crazier the story, so not waking up, bad grades, all the things that keep happening, and the parents are wondering, is something going on? It only makes sense if they are using. It's like the stories are so bad that none of it makes any sense until you hear, well, they might be on drugs.
Do
And
you
then all of
think
a sudden it
sometimes?
does.
Well, and it just made me think of the fact that so many parents, they don't want to believe it. My kid
They
wouldn't
don't.
do that. I've raised them right. We live in this neighborhood. Come on. Is it sometimes the parents being in denial?
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, who wants to have a kid who's a heroin addict? And there is, and I'm even from San Antonio, I'm getting them from every zip code here. And the bigger zip codes, it seems like the more that I'm getting. And and it's horrifying for the parents to admit that. They're going because they still have an idea that a heroin addict is somebody that lives downtown and drinks out of a brown bag and is homeless looking, and it is the kid next door right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
The parents come with the kids and they say, yeah, things are okay. As soon as the parents leave the room, Greg just looks at him and goes, you're on heroin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how long
It's
you been
just,
on?
and when they know, and it's also, maybe they're scared to admit it in front of their parents.
Horrified. It's the bad thing about this. How could you tell your parents that you've gotten addicted to heroin? And it sneaks up, and it's catching so many of them because they're smoking it like pot now, and it's so easy to get. And you can have a kid who, in a week of trying it, is a heroin addict a week later. Now, the thing about it, the real important thing is that you want to find out if that's going on, because depending on when you catch it, depends on how hard it is to turn it back.
Got it. So the longer you wait,
Yes.
the less your chances are. Okay, finally, the last three were their sleeping patterns change, you sense some unusual smells, and also clenching their jaws.
Yeah.
What is that? Explain to me.
It's a side effect of drugs.
They're clenching their jaws a lot.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's more an effect of cocaine, meth, amphetamine, stuff like that. Not so much have I ever noticed that with heroin.
The jaw,
The clenching of the jaw. It's a neuromuscular reaction to doing the drug.
so that's more of just like a physical reaction they can't help at that point.
Yeah, I would say another thing to look at though are things missing, money and so on,
Got it.
because they
Gotta
have
pay
to
for
fund
it.
this thing and you got to buy it. So, that thing of I could have sworn I took 200 out of the ATM and it's down to 140 and you're like $60 and you're trying to remember, and they're smart. I mean, as drug addicts, we don't want to set the alarm off. So you take 40 at a time. Or a piece of jewelry is missing or whatever.
All of the signs, they all add up. And, again, if you're not sure, you still should always say something and always talk to your teenager, at least while they're 18 and living under your roof, right?
For sure.
I'm with you, no privacy. We make the rules. The parents make the rules.
my
right?
house.
That's right. That's
Yeah, that
right.
would be another one too when you think about it. Greg's a great advocate of this. Yeah, let me see your phone. And
That's
just
a
go,
good one.
if you got nothing to hide, let me go through your text
Yeah.
messages. Take the top 20 texts and just go through the conversation, and you're going to find out.
Especially today's teenagers. They're constantly on their phones, so everything's probably on there. Okay, guys, after the break, we're going to answer some viewer questions. We have some viewers who have written in, and we will get to those after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone, and we are back with SOBA Recovery. Greg and Daniel are still sitting here, but we also have Doug Minder, who also works with these gentlemen, and we're glad you're here. You've been here before.
Yes.
This isn't the first time, so good to see you again. And we were going to get to some viewer questions, and we have actually three, and I'm going to start with this one here from Jason. So he said, I've always wondered, is it possible for a person to beat an addiction with just plain willpower? Do they have to go into treatment?
I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. I have this actually, when I got sober, my friend and I were both using pills together, opiate pills, Oxycontin, and he didn't go into treatment, and I did. And he got on a drug called Suboxone and got off Suboxone and never went to treatment. But he was one of the most miserable people I've ever met in my life. And he would, he lost his wife, his child, and just wasn't happy. Going to work, started drinking heavily. And 2 years ago, he died. He went off the road at 80 miles an hour, hit a tree, and died. And
They're a unicorn.
and there
People
was
who can do that.
Yeah, but Greg taught me something and why after 9 rehabs, I finally got it at his place. And he said, remember that the drug or the alcohol is the rearing of the head. It's the afterthought of what really probably is an underlying situation that you need to work on. And that's what makes SOBA so different, because they aggressively go after finding out, identifying what those issues are, and then through a variety of things, spiritual, social, psychological treatment, you get to figure out what that is. If you go cold turkey and just try to do it on your own, you're probably never going to face that underlying thing that's just the reason why you're using
That's
and
the
you're
vicious
uncomfortable.
circle, right?
There it is.
I would suggest, just in case, you don't want to be wrong. And people do and can white knuckle it for a while, but if you're wrong about whether you need treatment or not, I would rather be wrong that I went to it than wrong that I didn't.
Good point. Good point, Greg. Okay, I want to get to Sandy's question. She said, my friend has told me about her son's recent experimentation with drugs. I can tell she's worried about him, and she's tried talking to her son, but hasn't seen a change. So what's the next step? That's what Sandy wants to know.
Call someone. Have a and ask the tough questions. And do something. This is, you can either wait till something really bad happens or take an action as if they were sick with anything that was critical. If somebody in your family is sick, you take them to the hospital.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And the progression of how it's been laid before us is that if you just take a drug test and hand it to your child and say, I suspect, no, don't do it that way. Have the drug test, but ask first. You're acting a little peculiar, or I'm sensing, are you taking any kind of drugs? Let them say no first, then you turn around and go, well, then you should have no problem. Go ahead and take this test.
Well, another way that you can do it is you can say, people are worried about thinking that you're on drugs, so I need to show that you're not.
There you go. I believe in you,
Yeah.
so here.
Yeah,
prove
and I
me-
just
prove
want to
me
be
right.
able to say I've drug tested
Yeah.
you and you're fine.
Got it. Good points. Okay, finally, guys, I want to get to this one from Beth. This also is about her teenager. She says, my teen has battled an addiction in the past. He's clean and sober now, has been for a year. However, he's starting college this coming fall, and I'm worried he will relapse because of the college situations, parties, binge drinking, etc. What can I do to help him? How do I keep him on the right track? Is there anything I can even do at this point since he's going to be leaving home?
A lot of universities have sober dorms, and they all have meetings and things kids can go to. We have programs at 5 universities right now that are actually outpatient programs, but I think there's about 40 of them. And around here in
great.
Texas, I know that for sure Austin and the Longhorn guys, what is that, Texas Tech?
Texas.
Is that the Longhorn
No,
guys?
Texas
that's
is Longhorn.
That would be
That's
Texas
Austin.
Longhorns. That's Austin. That's right.
Okay,
Well, that makes sense. They would have something. Huh?
Yeah, they there's a huge thing in the universities of sober dorms, and check into it. But yeah, if somebody is a year, if they know how to be in recovery and they follow their recovery, then they're going to be okay.
Should parents just check up on them more? Should you call them more? Because you also don't. I wouldn't want them to feel like I didn't trust them or I thought that they couldn't handle it. But at the same time, you want to have that communication.
Yeah, talk to them. Communication is always when they go dark on you. That's when you got to worry. If something, just look for changes and don't be afraid to ask if they're okay.
All right, guys. Well, again, stick around because after the break, we are going to tell you exactly what you can do today if someone you love really needs some help. We'll be right back. Good morning. Welcome back. If you or someone you love is battling an addiction, there is help out there. SOBA Texas is open here in San Antonio. You can give them a call 24/7. The gentlemen from SOBA Recovery are still here. We had a quick question. A Facebook friend or follower asked us about the cost of treatment? A lot of people put it off because they think they can't afford it.
It depends at what level of care they're coming in, but the best way to do it, call, and if you have insurance, have the specialist verify the insurance, and they can tell you if there's any kind of copay or deductible or what it would be.
So just the best thing to do is call you, and you guys can walk them through step by step. And finally, if there's someone watching today, maybe they feel like they need help, they have a teen, they have a loved one that needs help, what can they do today? Because I know you always say just call, don't wait any longer.
That's it. Reach out, start a conversation, make a phone call. It starts the phone call.
Yeah, and you know, remember too that it's not a sales pitch. Right? These people are here to help. Some of the people don't qualify, and we direct them to places or facilities or things that they possibly can do, or that's closer to home, or whatever their circumstances are. So knowledge is power. Come get powerful by calling us, and let us try to help you and empower you.
You could save their lives. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We want to give everyone again the information for SOBA. Here it is. You can give them a call. You can log on to their website. SOBA Texas is open now. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.